It's always a pleasure to come to UGM, chat with everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor. Let me just ask you really quick, how many are you are from the West, educated in the West? PhD from US, Australia, Europe? Okay. How many of you have interacted with industry in the West? One person, okay. So I was talking to Alan just now during coffee break. This issue with academics working with industries sometimes is also an issue in the West, in Western countries. I think we can learn a little bit from that model, even though later on maybe the model cannot be transplanted 100% into Indonesia. But at the very least we can select those that make sense to us and see where we can take it from there. So in terms of Indonesia, I've been back to Indonesia for the past, or maybe full-time maybe 4 or 5 years. I graduated from MIT in 2004, but I was working here in UI part-time and then also in Singapore. Full-time in business since 2009, at least in the pharmaceutical company. And ever since I engaged UGM 1 or 2 years ago, I've started to sort of notice certain things that I think I want to point out in this session, and maybe we can share about these observations. So I have some good news and some bad news for you. The bad news is that historically I think Indonesia has been pretty bad in terms of research funding, this you know. This is also related to why the interaction with industry, between industry and academia is relatively poor. Yeah? When there's no money in the system, then of course nobody pays attention to it. And industry, historically in Indonesia, have been relatively low innovation, has relatively low innovation. Kebanyakan dagang gitu ya. Although recently there are some pretty good companies, Biopharma, Kalbe, etc., Indofood, that are innovative in how they do business, not only in the research but also marketing, manufacturing, etc. But to get a groundswell of innovation and also interaction between industry and academia, this is actually my long-term dream, that this will happen in this country. So usually the question that you may have from the academic perspective is the following. How do I work with industry? Okay, I have this invention. How early should I think about applying my research? Should I think about it now, at the early stage, or should I after publication, etc.? Funding, R&D from government is pretty low here. I think it's, what, 0.01% of GDP, yeah? That is extremely low. And that has to be fixed somehow. How to interest industry in my discoveries? How do I even tell industry what I have? How do I start my own company? This is something that the US is very strong in, the startup culture. This is something that MIT is very strong in, etc., etc. And the main gist of it is that for industry's perspective, it's not really about money, but it's about risk management. Especially when you discover something, you have a product, you think it's a good product, but from the industry's perspective, it's actually still an early prototype, quote unquote. And to bring that prototype to market, the industry also has to manage the risk. How much money should I spend on developing this product to market versus how much am I going to get? So it's about risk management. If your product is excellent enough, then industry will automatically look at it and say, okay, I'm going to do it. I think we have probably already seen this in a couple of discoveries in Indonesia. There's one about contraceptive for men, kung nggak salah. There's an herbal product that was discovered that may work as a contraceptive for men. Industry was clamoring over that one, because that's a unique, very strange product, and it breaks conventional wisdom. But how to make those kind of products, those kind of discoveries more often, that I think is the trick that not only Indonesia faces, but also other countries. Yeah. So a little bit something about myself. I mean, I understand a little bit about both sides, industry and academia. My PhD was in biology, in peptide science from MIT. I still have a position there. And also I am a member of the board of this company called OH2 Labs in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So this lab licenses an MIT technology for drug discovery and further develops it in order to do a licensing agreement with other pharmaceutical companies. So at the very least, I have a little bit of experience, not a lot, on the licensing and also how startups are operated in the US. And I'm also working on solid tumor in collaboration with MRCCC in Indonesia. This is just a project for interest purposes. About our companies, we are expanding manufacturing to Klaten, and one of the reasons why we chose Klaten instead of Solo is because of the physical proximity to UGM. Because I feel very strongly that industry should have a good relationship with academia. That has to happen. And so we are establishing collaboration with UGM in engineering and food sciences, how to bring some of their discoveries, some of your discoveries to the market. This is still early in process. We have failed in this one, honestly, for reasons that I may go into later on. Food sciences is still ongoing. So these are comments, mostly negative, that I have heard throughout my short career. Yeah? This is not exclusive to Indonesia. This is academia's perspective, this is industry's perspective. From academia, we've always communicated, but industry is never interested in our discoveries. Meetings always, okay, fine, nice meeting, nice discovery, thank you very much, and then no news. Okay? From industry, if you want innovation, go to other countries. Yeah? Don't be offended. This is actually what we need to face this together. Yeah? From academia, industry is mostly concerned about profit. But we also have a mandate to do social work. How do you balance this as a university? And this one I don't know the answer, honestly. From industry, universities' projects are geared towards social work, not towards really products that can be accepted in the market. Okay? So at least, at the very least, there's some agreement here. From academia, industry is secretive, will not share data, results, market analysis. True, mostly. From industry, universities don't know what will sell. They just don't have any idea. Okay? From academia, the government doesn't give us money for research. From industry, the government doesn't give us incentives for research. So at least both of us agree that this is the government's fault, yeah? So to me, a lot of these things is actually just, I think it's slightly worse in Indonesia and in Java, where you sort of meet each other and discuss problems and talk, but the main problems just aren't being solved. There's a tendency to be too polite, I think, here, so that you sort of beat around the bush and not really targeting the problem itself. It's probably neither party's fault, but it is just the way it is. And the trick is how to get each side to speak truthfully. You can be truthful, but still polite, of course. Yeah, polite is a must. So communication is often a problem. And again, this is not exclusive to Indonesia, but I have noticed here maybe slightly more than other countries. First of all, any comment on this? Do you agree, disagree? It's all the government's fault. It's always the government's fault. Yeah.
Can I just comment, Steve, that it's very similar in Australia as well. The big issue that we have dealt with or are dealing with, I think, is improving communication, but particularly improving the response from academia to actually listen to what industry wants. Rather than, as you've got it on your left-hand side there, it's a perspective of academics know what they've got and they want to sell that to industry without even listening to what industry wants. So now the conversation is starting to change so that academics are actually listening to what industry is putting on the agenda as something which is a problem to be solved, rather than university people going to industry saying, have we got a deal for you? It's now turning around, coming the other way. So it's communication both ways, I think, is important.
Ah, very interesting. That's a new perspective. What do you guys think about that? So academics' response towards what industry wants. Any comments?
So that means, for example, I'm just thinking about my role in the faculty. So that means it's actually possible to ask, for example, you, Steve, to present what's your plan for, let's say, 5 to 10 years, and how can we fit in to that plan? Okay.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that is an interesting.
And this is something that industry is also willing to share openly about this, or I mean.
From my perspective, some companies, not all. Some companies, maybe who are a little bit more progressive, may be able to do so. They will not tell you the entire strategy, but within their grand strategy, there may be things that they say, okay, I need to work with academia on this. That is definitely possible.
Actually, industry is very smart. I'm familiar with some approaches that have been made from the United States to researchers in Australia to say, we like what you've got. Your research can help solve a problem we have. So it's been an approach by industry to the researcher to solve a problem. And they form a collaboration, and it all moves on from there. That's the sort of example that can happen. But you're right. I'm sure Steve is right. Only some companies will talk about some of their information. You'll never get the full picture from any company whatsoever, and quite rightly.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That is all right.
I want to comment a little bit about that. So, speaking from experience, working in the hospital, has been working with some pharmaceutical company. What happened is actually the idea come from the company. The company come to us because we have the patients for their product that they want to try. And then we have some data that they will need in the patient. So they come to us, they have their ideas, which we then discuss together and develop, and then finally perform together. So maybe it's a little bit almost similar to what Alan has said before. So because, you know, for pharmaceutical company, they want to develop a product, for example, and they need to do clinical trials. And the one who has the patient for those clinical trials are the clinicians. So sometimes, yeah, like in one project that we are working right now, it's actually the proposals to do the research actually come from the company, and then we just kind of try to make it better and then more ethical and stuff like that, and finally we can go together. Maybe that's some.
Very good. So that is already happening. So
I think my comments were really coming from a biology perspective, but you're absolutely right. Product development prior to clinical trials.
how far does that conversation go? Has that resulted in a new product in the market?
Okay, so I cannot comment how far because it's still ongoing, but the point is that we have my senior who has close cooperations before with the company, and then when the company finally wants to do something, they try to do with the one they know. So then they come to our place because he already know my senior, because they need us to be the researchers who are actually doing it with the patients, who are actually taking data from the patients, who actually really do all the field works and stuff. So then we can also have our own ideas about what we think need to be done about that. So, but there will be some different. A few years ago with some multi-center clinical trials, when they have already had strict protocols, rigid protocols for international pharmaceutical companies, it's very hard for us to have some, we just do it, but we don't really have any further idea about that. But with this one, which is, it's by Calbe, so I just mentioned it. So they are more open to our ideas about what can actually be done and so on. We don't know yet what is the end, but the process is promising. I mean, they heard our ideas and try to accommodate in their proposals.
Yeah, very good. So like Alan said, there are different levels of collaboration. This one in the clinical setting where the scope of the project seems to be very clear, and the collaboration also is extremely clear. and there's a lead, i.e. the industry, saying, okay, please help us do this, this, this. Yeah. And what Alan was saying is slightly a little bit more upstream, a bit earlier in how to get industry to fund early or get involved in early sort of development, research development work. I think for that aspect, there's not an issue in terms of collaboration. This aspect, the earlier stage, there may be some things that we need to work on a little bit. Okay. I'm relatively a purist in terms of academics and industry's role. For me, academia's role are probably three things that will make it excellent. Number one, selecting the right research topic. Number two, getting the culture correct in terms of innovation. And number three, getting this industry linkage really, really well. And industry role is to do aggressive outreach towards academia, manage the risk, and also financing. And what I think should happen, I will focus on a couple of these things. Number one, in terms of research topics, I've stated this before in UGM, select topics that wow people. It's not really something that, oh, I'm taking this technology, I'm taking this diagnosis and applying it to an Indonesian context, and then I'm publishing this result. Scientifically, that's okay. In terms of publication, in terms of conferences, that's okay. But that is not something that actually industry is looking for. Yeah? Topics that can make a big impact, of course. Big impact means big market, and industry has to look into that. I.e., this one, topics that wow people, or topics that are so unexpected that grabs people's attention. In terms of culture, entrepreneurial students, I think that's not an issue in UGM. From my brief interactions with a couple of students, it seems like the students here are very energetic, very entrepreneurial, very, very smart. I think this is not an issue. It's just how to empower them to further develop this entrepreneurial spirit. Collaborative and innovative, I think this is not an issue in UGM. Strive for excellence. In general, this is an issue for a lot of universities, not only in Indonesia. At what point do you stop and say, okay, this is good enough? At what point do you still say, you know what, I can do better. Let me just keep on going, okay? For me, excellence is a must. You have to be better than anybody else. And in terms of industry linkage, currently, briefly, get the deal done attitude towards licensing. This is what MIT is excellent in. Whatever happens, get the deal done. Plus or minus negotiation, you go plus or minus a couple percentage points in terms of royalty sharing, etc. Never mind, get the deal done. Fast. Yeah? And in terms of industry's role, outreach is pretty obvious, financing also pretty obvious. This one is something that Indonesia is relatively weak in, Indonesian industry. Indonesian industry, especially pharma, are currently only interested in quote-unquote sure things. Meaning that, okay, I developed this product, I know I can sell it. Yeah? That risk-taking is not there in the industry, and that is not right. What I'm hoping is that this will change slowly, and what I'm hoping also is that academia, UGM, can play a role in changing also the industry's perspective on risk. So, like I said, perhaps we can, get a couple of interesting things from MIT's culture and technology licensing about these concepts. So a little bit of a background on MIT. MIT is, in the US, it's not considered an old institution, but in Indonesia, I think it will be considered old. It is relatively small, 10,000 students, 60% graduate students. Annual research budget is huge, $1.5 billion. Berapa tuh? 20 trillion, yeah, per year. Industry-sponsored research is about 15 to 20%. So relatively small, mostly government, yeah, and mostly from Department of Defense, NIH, etc. This infrastructure and also culture makes them able to generate really productive research. In terms of inventions, this is total, yeah? In terms of patents and in terms of licenses. Most of them are still active. A lot of universities They have a lot of patents, they have a lot of inventions, but they're just sitting, they're just a bunch of papers sitting in a cabinet. They're not being applied. What is it about MIT or Stanford or a couple of these tech institutions in the US that make these licenses actually get adopted and get applied? So annually, number of applications, 300 for inventions, 100 for licenses that are being licensed out. And 25% of licenses go to startups. Yeah, so a lot of startups. That is maybe the power of the US, their startup community. So not only institutional-wise, but the alumni that graduated from MIT have been responsible for establishing more than 25,000 companies worldwide. These companies employ more than 3.3 million. If these companies are combined, their revenue would be more than $2 trillion, equivalent to the 11th largest economy in the world. Yeah, so it's not only about the institution itself, but the main product of the institutes, i.e. the students and the professors and the postdocs.
Steve, can I just ask you a question on that previous slide? The movement of, or the registering of inventions, patents and licenses, which has ended up as an invention, a patent or a license. Has all of this come from as we say, blue sky research?
The exact number I do not know, Alan, but from my interaction with professors and being in that environment, I would say most of them are from their own thinking and their own need to do things. But then again, the group that I've worked with are mostly sort of more towards the startup sort of mentality, attitude.
Yeah, this is slightly different to what we were discussing earlier about the communication between academics and industry. It's clear that from MIT's perspective, they've got some very, very intelligent faculty who can generate new things which industry wants. Whereas what we were discussing before was the issue of industry and academia talking together to see where the common ground is to work on something going forward. So this is a bit different, I think.
Absolutely. So in the case of MIT, remember, MIT is already pretty far in the process of doing this. MIT got to where it started because of World War II, mostly, because of the need of the war in order to invent things, for the war purposes. And from that, they established the technical capabilities to go to the next step, which is actually creating new things. And ideally, I would say, a university should go along this path also. Maybe in the beginning, a little bit closer collaboration with industry, but like I mentioned, once technically and culturally academia is able to think innovatively and understand a little bit about what's out there, what would be interesting, what would be applicable, then the jump towards newer things that are applicable will become automatic. Does that make sense for people? I would say collaboration, close collaboration with industry, that is just the beginning. Yeah? Eventually, you would want to create things that wow industry, came out of nowhere, because like I said, I'm relatively a purist in terms of the academic's role in invention. To me, academia should lead in invention. Yeah. If that's applicable here or not, I do not know. I hope it is. There are three pillars that MIT is excellent in. Number one, the ecosystem. Number two, policies. And number two, the technology office itself. The ecosystem, some key success factors are the following. Embraces risk. Failure is not a black mark. You can fail many times. Many informal mentors and coaches who are willing to spend time to talk to you, coach you for free. Critical mass of entrepreneurship programs, things that help students, faculty, postdoc think about entrepreneurship. The policies. MIT, even though it licenses a lot of technologies, the priority is still on education, discovery, research, and publication. They never veer from that. Okay? The processes are non-bureaucratic. They have the attitude of not expecting to get rich quick. They understand that even though technology gets licensed to a company, that company still has to develop the technology, still has to perfect it, still has to market it, still has to develop it. And clear conflict of interest rules, this is extremely important. What's okay for a university faculty, what's not okay in terms of interacting with industry. This is very important. Yep. And everybody understands this. The TLO, the Technology Licensing Office, has the following attitudes. Impact, not income. They never think about income. Get the deal done. Each officer has the authority to say yes or no at the table, on the table. So they don't have to, discuss and then, okay, let me discuss it with my peers. That becomes a long process. So they say, you know what, I have the authority to say yes to this. Or I have the authority to say yes, but give us additional rights, whatever. Yeah, they have that authority. And the attitude, this is a quote from him, from Mark, university IP, intellectual property, is all risk, and the price should be low. That actually is very important. The price should be low. That is something that I honestly, right now, I'm having a bit of trouble with UGM. Yeah. Because before we start, we're already talking about a relatively high price, which I think is, it makes us pause a little bit and say, should we go or should we not? I think getting the deal done quickly is important, just to get traction. So it actually takes a village to raise a child, meaning that MIT is in a good position in that the Boston community and Massachusetts as a state, a province, ini jadi provinsi ya, there are a lot of resources that startups and entrepreneurs can go to. A lot of forums, a lot of grants, trade associations, etc., venture capital, sources for funding, etc. And I imagine Stanford is the same with Silicon Valley. A lot of VCs there. Yeah, but this is just an effect of the environment. In terms of the TLO, really quickly, I think UGM has the same sort of structure, which I'm very happy to hear about. So the TLO is considered a department at MIT, reports to the VP of Research, who reports to the provost. Not too many people in it, only a total of 8 licensing officers. This is senior position, yeah. They call them officers, but they're more like managers. So they manage the lawyers, the accountants, everybody. Most have technical background. Most are from industry. And they're good communicators and negotiators. So why do people want to go to, why do people with this type of experience want to work at MIT for this kind of position? I'm sure in industry they can make more. And the answer is the network, the inventions. Mark, for example, was a TLO, now he's the CEO of a startup company and on the board of several startup companies. So they also look at it, and MIT understands this. These officers take this as a stepping stone for their career advancement too. And that's okay, as long as you get regeneration of officers. Yeah? So again, the way they operate, cradle to grave concept, from beginning to end, they take one project from beginning to end. Autonomous decision making, get the deal done and commit at the negotiation table. Don't let this go until you say yes or no. Yeah, you have to commit. So interestingly, as I mentioned before, the budget for research is about $1.5 billion per year. The revenue from licensing, patent, etc. is only $80 million for MIT. Low. MIT doesn't make that much money from royalty, license, etc. That's not the point of doing this. Most, of course, from royalties, yeah. But again, this is out of $80 million, very small. So usually the way they do this is inventors share 1/3 of royalties after deduction of 15% administration fee. So 15% of royalties, usually. So then you may ask, so what's the point really? Okay, why the point of licensing? Well, the way the institute looks at it is the following. Its job is actually to promote the non-financial benefits of technology, of working with industry. Creating entrepreneurial graduates, graduates who understand what industry wants, what industry is like. Consulting expertise, the professors themselves, by interacting with industry, they know what's going on in the world, in the economic world. What are the new developments? Sometimes in academia, we tend to be a little bit under a turtle shell, yeah? Sometimes very isolated. We don't know outside of our research what's going on in the world. Do we know what Uber is doing right now in Malaysia? Not really. Do we know what virtual reality or artificial intelligence is doing, and how can that be applied to our research? Not too much. We go to conferences where we know the topics of, yeah? But by doing a lot of consulting, then you get to understand a lot of what's going on in the world. Collaborative research, of course. Participation of staff in startups. This is actually very, very important. This is incentive for talented staff to join the institute, like becoming a TLO, an officer. This also will allow the technologies to be rapidly licensed and tested in the real world, rather than staying as unused patents. And of course, the ultimate goal is to create jobs and to increase economic development, which is very, very important. Again, for this one, participation of staff in startups, the conflict of interest policy has to be extremely, extremely clear. A little bit something about startup. Usually, this is how from my experience, this is what one startup does. So the university always owns the patent. It licenses to a startup company, and the startup company may sub-license to other companies, generating revenue. Yeah. Later on, then the startup company, which already has revenue, then can develop its own product. If the startup company already has a lot of money through seed funding, etc., they can develop product themselves usually. But usually in the beginning you don't have that hundreds of millions of dollars. You have maybe $10 million, and you have to survive with that. So therefore, a lot of these startup companies license the core technology and sub-license that further for specific applications. So my recommendation, this is, I believe, is my last slide, for how to really attract industry. In terms of communication and meeting with industry, that's easy. Call them, have a conference, seminar, show your inventions. But after that, what? Usually nothing. Nothing comes out of it. Yeah, there's no continuation. This is why we have to break this ceiling. This is what I recommend, especially I think most of you are just starting in your research careers, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Be crazy with research ideas. Yeah? The crazier sometimes is better. Making something cheaper by making it in Indonesia is not interesting enough anymore. You will not attract industry's interest by doing that. Challenge conventional wisdom. Don't do research by copy, i.e., okay, let me take what's available and apply it in an Indonesian context. Let me take, there's this paper on this that was done in the US or in Brazil or in China. Let me see what happens in Indonesia. For industry's role, when you want to communicate to industry, it has to be a little bit more than that. Challenge conventional wisdom. They use these techniques. Let me develop a different technique. Stretch yourself. Always ask what can be done. What more can be done? Can it be faster, smaller, cheaper? Cheaper by intelligent design. Yeah? Not only by, hey, let me produce it in Indonesia. Decide if you want social or profit. This one, honestly, I struggle with. There's no right answer, but from my understanding, it's hard to do both. I want to be social and I want profit. You have to choose one, especially for a startup. You have to choose one. Both are correct, neither is wrong, but you have to choose one. Okay, I want this to be profitable. Or you say, I want to help people, I want to do this, that. Yeah, you have to choose. Because in terms of linkage to industry and what you do next, that is very important that you have that clarity. Understand that signing an agreement with industry is just the beginning. Many products will fail in the market. Therefore, get the deal done ASAP, work with industry to develop the product further, and yeah, hope for the best. I think from this, what I hope is that we all gain experience with working together. Yeah, I think I really wish to sort of have a conversation going on this. This is, of course, just my opinion. You may have other opinion. You may agree, disagree, but at least by discussing this, we'll come to a common ground and discover what's best for Indonesia and for UGM. Thank you very much.
In some universities, there are center for incubation, yeah, to translate the academia to industry. And in UGM, I think we have this in university level, but so far I think it's not that effective.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking that it must be in faculty level, because the industry characteristics will be different from one faculty to another.
Yeah.
So I think it will be better if in my opinion, if Faculty of Medicine also has this kind of incubation center, so that there will be a better communication between academia and industry, of course. And from the industry perspective, I think the industry will also can drive the discoveries, right? So
Yes.
if the incubation center is in the faculty, then they will really understand what is now going on in the academia.
Yes.
And the industry will also will also enrich the idea to be more product-oriented or maybe output-based research. Yeah, I think the way of collaboration maybe can be like having a center in the faculty level.
Very good. That is definitely an option.
Thank you.
That is an option. It will work in some cases. In other cases, it may just create bureaucracy. What I would like to propose is actually a different sort of model that can go in parallel with this. Right now, what is going on in the tech industry is that there are a lot of startups. Yeah, it is internet business things. There was just a big conference in Jakarta these past few days, wildly successful. There are many, because Indonesia is a large market. Every tech company in Southeast Asia has an Indonesian strategy. They have to go into Indonesia, especially those in Singapore, Malaysia. They have to go into Indonesia because this is where the market is for Southeast Asia. A lot of these tech companies, the founders, the scientists are young people. They create their own ideas, crazy sometimes, and then they just run with it. Sometimes they go to venture capital to get seed funding. This is actually what I would recommend for something like this, a tech startup sort of industry, that try not to think about the incubation sort of everything pooled into one center, but how to motivate and how to get the people on the ground, the students, the postdocs, the PhD students, to actually create their own ideas, start something, and link up these people with the funding agencies. And there are now a lot of funding agencies, the venture capital. I brought a group here a couple of months ago. Bu hosted us, kindly hosted us. So how to actually make this link? It does not have to be necessarily through an incubation center or a center in UGM. Not necessary. Get rid of that bureaucracy. Empower the students to come up with their own ideas and how to be entrepreneurial. I think that is another way of looking at it. That's specific for tech, yeah, because this is something that a student can do in their spare time on the laptop. For other things, yes, for biology, biotech, new drugs, you have to go through a sort of longer route, I would say. So there are different models of doing this. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think something like that is possible in Indonesia, in UGM, where you have small groups of just students? UGM will be hosting some venture capital and other tech companies who are relatively successful to teach them about what they think, how they think, and provide the linkage right away, linkage direct. direct linkage. Is that technically possible? Institutionally possible?
And not really having the attitude that, that those who work at the central level, they should serve the needs of those who are below. So sometimes when dealing with this, I mean, sometimes they, at the university, they ask me, okay, who is, what's the product that are being developed at the Faculty of Medicine? And then I mention a few of the research of the staff. And then, and after that, I don't hear anything anymore from them, because it's more directly between the university and the researchers. So this is also difficult for me, because I thought there should be, I mean, serving at the same time, but also informing at what stage. And sometimes the only time when they inform is when they have problems. That's when they when they talk to me. So I think this is, it may be two different issues, whether it's centralized or decentralized, with what is the function and roles of that. I mean, what we learn when we join a conference on research management, a lot of in the developed countries, their structure is actually centralized at the university level. But within that office, they have a lot of business managers that they could help and they could assist the faculties. I mean, this is something that we don't have. Once everything is centralized, it's sort of, we have to report, we have to, and they're not really, they are sometimes creating a bigger distance, a bureaucracy, as you said. Yeah, so I'd like to hear also what happens in Australia in terms of whether it's centralized or decentralized on this issue.
I think most of the time it's centralised, but in some of the bigger institutions they're now using a blended model, if I could put it that way, where they have a central office for technology transfer, innovation, you know, all of that, commercialisation space, but they have a series of offices within, people within that office who have responsibility for interacting with individual faculties. So you might have a central university office for commercialisation, but there would be a person who would be your specialist working with your faculty, who is obviously liaising between the senior people involved in commercialisation, but they're the middle person, if you like, between the faculty and the senior roles. So I'd have to say, listening to your presentation, Steve, on the maturity of what MIT does, is obviously built around 150 years of experience. And particularly, I was intrigued by your comment about the wartime initiatives that were arisen, which really drove the culture. God forbid, let's not have another war, which drives the way in which we do these sorts of things. So that prompted me to think about, well, what is the alternative to war? And I think the alternative is the United Nations global challenges. You know, the global challenges that are facing humanity are the things which should be driving our innovative space rather than war. So that's my hope. But coming back to the issue of maturity, even in Australia, we don't have the same system that MIT is operating. Right. We don't have the commercialisation managers who have the authority to sign. We don't have them with authority to make final decisions at the meetings that they're in with industry. We have not yet got that maturity, and it comes with a level of experience and confidence, and we don't yet have it generally in Australia. I've been involved through another institution in Australia where some major deals have just been done, and those major deals had to come to the board of the institute for sign-off by the board. They went through the commercialisation committee of the board of the institute, and then finally to the board of the institute. And we would deal, as a board member, I was dealing with this by email, because I live in Canberra, the institute is in a different city. The members of the board were contacted by email and asked to respond within 24 hours. It's difficult for board members to do that, because they're very busy people. So having the authority of the person who's actually negotiating at the table with industry to be able to sign is a fantastic advantage, but we are not yet confident enough, and we don't have the maturity yet and the experience yet with personnel who do these deals to actually give them the authority to sign on behalf of the board of the institute. We still are going through that risk management phase and the credibility, validity of the deals that are being done and giving board oversight to those decisions.
Yeah, it's, I agree. And usually, if you, just to add, Alan, if we want to attract good people who actually are competent to make these decisions.
I think in Australia, I don't know, I'm just speculating, but I think the number of people that would have sufficient experience in risk management in this space to do the deal at the table would be probably less than 20 in Australia.
Yeah.
I only know of a few.
Yeah.
And I can also report that the few people that do these deals go into these deals with legal backup. They have lawyers, commercialisation lawyers who work with them to make sure the deal is right. And the number of lawyers who are skilled in this space of interacting between academics and industry, I could number less than probably 10.
Wow, okay.
So that's an issue for us. We are building expertise, but we're nowhere near what the United States can do at the moment.
Right. I think one comment regarding Bu'ut, maybe if there is a centralized office.
But they have to be able to facilitate the discussion between people who are relatively experienced in working with industry as well as the industry people.
Yes.
And therein lies the difficulty, I think, because of a lack of maturity at the academic level of working with industry.
Yeah. Let me ask, what do you think about being crazy with research ideas? Is there a difficulty in getting funding if you're too crazy? Usually that's the question that I get. Oh, too crazy, no money.
Steve, I just have some issues that I want to raise.
Okay.
So first is, I mentioned it before in our webinar, but I need to mention it again because it's based on experience. So we are doing clinical trial, right? So we plan to do that, and we have already got an ethical approval. But when the ethical board knows that we are doing it with a company, then the process gets a lot more complicated. The scrutiny gets a lot more tighter than when we do it by ourselves. And then we apply for the clearance from BPOM. And also because we are doing it with a company, the ethical scrutiny becomes much, much harder than if we do it by ourselves. And we need around 1 year to finish all the process that is happening there, which I think is rational because considering what you mentioned before, there is a culture of secrecy in the company that could probably make them, keep the data which could be, I don't know whether it's really happening or not, keep the data which is actually probably important but not published, only publish something that maybe the consumers want to hear or something like that. But is that the same thing also happening in MIT in terms that, by going to the industry, you put yourself in more scrutiny in making, you are making yourself need to do some extra works to make your research actually going? Yeah.
The short answer is no, because people are so used to it that it's actually expected that you talk to industry. So they're in the difference here. And ideally, if the research, the ethical committee is objective, it does not matter whether it's sponsored by a company or whatever. I mean, it should be judged based on the merit of the proposal. You can be just an independent university proposing a clinical trial that is actually not that good. And that should be challenged.
Officers who have certain specialties, like for example, IP specialists, intellectual property. We don't have it yet in our faculty. So no one knows to whom we need to discuss or consult about the intellectual property, for example. So in the faculty level, if we have some kind of center for incubation, there will be some staffs with certain specialties. For example, for the economic, from the background of economics, they may have some ideas of having a collaboration with certain industries And then for the one who has background in law or in intellectual property, then we can discuss something more about maybe some licensing or maybe about the intellectual properties, patents, and so on. And then from this center of incubation, they can also have a strategy to make the researchers having a good culture of translational-based research or product-based research, yeah, to make sure that the culture is developed. Yeah, thank you.
Having someone to consult with on specific issues when we deal with industry.
Yes, but must be dedicated, and if they are, I know in some universities, under this center of incubation, there will be some collaborators who are industries. So the industries also within the academia having let's say the R&D. One of the R&D tasks is in the academia, so they're also doing some part of the research, supporting the academia as well, and it is under the Center of Incubation Center. Yeah. Thank you.
The main ball of responsibility is to how that I challenge you guys is how to come up with crazy, quote unquote, research ideas. That when people look at it, go, wow, why didn't I think of that? That is excellent. You can do personally is to do this. And I assure you, not going to be 100%, but if you do this often enough, industry will pay attention. Yeah? Now, if I were to go to industry, I will tell them, oh, go talk to UGM more often. This is what we do in our company. Yeah?
Your challenge to the group here, Steve, is a very interesting one. However, what you've just said leaves open the opportunity that every faculty member in your faculty will come up with a crazy idea. There's no way that the faculty of 300 could deliver every crazy idea.
Yeah.
So what has to happen in the faculty, in my view, is that the 300 members of the faculty who have an interest in doing something crazy should come together, and they should spend time talking to each other to develop no more than 2 or 3 crazy ideas that everybody can make a contribution to. Maybe more than 3, 4, 5, maybe 10. So that's 30 people per crazy idea. Okay? With 30 people working on a crazy idea, it's just possible that that crazy idea could come off. If you have one person working on 300, you have 300 crazy ideas, each with one person, the chances of them coming off will be very, very much lower. So my encouragement would be to, yes, develop crazy ideas, but focus them, limit the number that you will be looking for, and add in a collaborative way, as we've been talking over the last 2.5 days or day and a half, add the collaborative element to all of that to bring multiple expertise into that crazy idea, to address that crazy idea and generate it. So that would be my take on what you're saying to them, Steve.
Excellent input, Alan. Thank you. Very good input. You get into the habit of generating ideas and challenging conventional wisdom, which is where a lot of companies are interested in, actually, because they need to get an edge over their competitors, right? You're not going to be successful 100% of the time. 10, maybe you get one idea that wows people. That's good, actually. Yeah, but get into the habit of actually, the definition of crazy ideas is that it challenges conventional wisdom. Nobody has thought about it. Yeah, and actually, that's where the biggest impact will be. That's my challenge to you.
So what kind of idea that the pharmaceutical company actually like? I thought the profitability of the idea would be the highest on the list, no?
When you think about profitability, you tend to be a little bit more conservative in your ideas. That's generally what I find. And again, once you start generating ideas that challenge conventional wisdom, you may strike a couple of ideas that nobody has ever thought about, where the potential market is actually tremendous. We have one, and I've talked to Buot about it. There are those things where if you just think and brainstorm hard enough, then you get these things. And it's a challenge, it's not easy, yeah?
The other challenge for UD and the university is the fact that these crazy ideas are also going to be high-risk ideas. And academics are naturally conservative and don't like to take too much risk.
Absolutely.
So having a culture and a support system in the faculty and the university which recognises that people are actually willing to take a risk and reward them for taking a risk,
Yes.
I think is a strategy which needs to be thought through. So even in my country, Australia, we don't well enough recognise the risk that people are taking with working with industry. It's being recognised as being something that's valuable, but the emphasis still is on publications and grants. Whereas thinking up a crazy idea and pursuing it, which is a high-risk strategy, is not recognised in any sense, any real sense of how to reward the people that are undertaking that. And yet this is what Steve is telling us is required for progress, both commercially but also socially.
Yeah, this is a video camera recording us. It's always sitting in one position throughout the whole lecture, probably throughout the entire seminar over the 3 days. Nowadays they have drones, small ones, that can fly. So why not just have a high definition camera with a silent drone that monitors a lecture, for example. Sometimes takes a video there. Whenever Alan says something, it goes zoom like that. Things like that, yeah, for example. That is, I mean, it may not be anything. Something like that, yeah.
We don't know how many bacteria is in this, yeah. So we can choose if it is good for snorkeling with touch about water, but not for much, maybe with helmet or and so on, and simple then like this, yeah. So it is a problem with snorkeling. We know with my student KKN in Komodo, sometimes it's windboot, and sometimes the water can
Swallow the water.
swallow water.
Yeah.
So choose it. If we choose, maybe we are say playing with water, but no problem with mix. So change the snorkeling by without swimming, without the people can swim. Also, it is safety, safety snorkeling.
Yeah.
Like this. If maybe the research can do maybe the KKN, we support the KKN, support by industry.
Yeah.
So the university, maybe university or faculty, we can enough money, maybe not a lot money from student to pay KKN in so very well.
Yeah.
Maybe to trial the snorkeling like this.
Yeah.
Just simple.
Yeah, no, excellent. A lot of the crazy ideas are actually simple. And that may be interesting. Somebody will say, that's great, we should totally do it. Yeah. Good. Further comments? If not, then...
Is there any systematic process to help the researchers or faculties to be crazy enough?
It's a habit, basically. I think after a while, if you have an idea and it's completely, you think it's crazy, but it's completely bonkers, it's actually not that good. The student or the faculty should not be put down for that. They say, okay, that's fine. What other ideas do you have? Yeah. Some crazy ideas are completely unworkable, but that's okay. It's a habit. You have to keep on asking. I think once you get that going, your students being encouraged to do that, your faculty being encouraged to do that, I think I'm pretty confident. I mean, Indonesians are smart enough to be able to do something great.
I think we need the Steve Yang Prize for crazy ideas. You know?
You're too kind, Alan.
I think I want to comment about that, Prof. Wood. I think, you know, the system that we have in faculty is that we will be rewarded when we have a publication. You know, in stroke patients, when they try to do rehabilitations, they have some kind of crane that they use. But he thinks there is a problem with the crane is that they cannot monitor the balance of the patients. So then he put some kind of a gyroscope in the crane so that when the patient is doing the training, when it is in imbalanced position, he can see in the screen that it is wrong, so he can reposition himself. So something very simple. He already do that. He won some competition for that, but then it stops in that part because there is no other mechanism that he can do, maybe to apply pattern for that or anything, which he doesn't have time to do that. He doesn't know how to do that, and he doesn't know if anybody in the faculty can actually facilitate for going forward from that. So then, yeah, even if it is there, we simply don't know whether there is a system of reward for doing that, and where can we go after we have that kind of idea.
You mentioned that even in Indonesia, the research is very small. So at the faculty, I mean, if we think about the grant administered by the faculty, we do have, but it's very limited to 30 to 50 million. And that's also at a competitive basis. So it's not a reward when someone, you know, have that excellent work. But if he doesn't propose or anything to the faculty, then it's not a reward. So it's not a reward, and definitely we also don't have a reward for a crazy idea. But for patent, I think this is the one of the function of what we call the Office of Research and Publication. Although it's still limited in terms of the competence of the staff there, but often when we get questions and we don't know the answers, then we can ask someone else at the university level, for example. So in terms of patent questions on MTA and Sutra, actually we have the sort of a simple office in order for the faculty to talk to. At least we have someone to talk to, and then we'll ask further if we cannot give the answer. But what I'm thinking also about, because we are discussing a lot about multidisciplinary research, now this is something that we should be able to create this new culture, because so far with these limited grants, I mean basically, or usually, the team is within the same departments. Now I noticed that. So nursing is with all the nursing colleagues, and it's within departments. Now what I learned also from Alan in the beginning is that it's better to give fewer but with a larger amount of funding, and perhaps it's also better to try to stimulate this multidisciplinary. Because perhaps we can contribute to the early sort of development, but then after that, I mean, this is the room for the researchers to apply to bigger funding. Yeah, please.
Okay, Pak Steve. I'm working in assisted reproductive technology, so most of the tools, everything is imported. Very expensive and very difficult to find. You have to purchase about 3-4 months in advance, and sometimes we get problems with the bea cukai, whatever. So here we are trying to develop a very simple thing and much cheaper. Let's say if we made it by ourselves, the tools to cryopreserve the cells, let's say the embryo, it will cost about 25,000. But then if we want to, we simply buy, it will cost about 500,000. And what I've been thinking is, of course, this cheap things is very useful here. We are using it for the patient, but then the patent, the industrial communication and collaboration will encourage us to have these cheaper things to be, how do you call in English, proper regulated. So sometimes we need the industrial or company collaboration to really make the rule of using tools, even it's very simple, in a proper way. So I believe most of my colleagues are very experienced with, we are using cheaper things in Indonesia because we have to be very creative. But then working with industrial, I hope will make what we are doing to innovate in cheaper things should be in a proper way, because industrial will have it. But in my problem is my area is quite narrow, so of course it's not interesting for industrial. Let's say the assisted reproductive technology in Indonesia, it's only about 23 clinics using it. Maybe industrial will be not interested.
Go beyond Indonesia. Don't think if you have a new design and it's cheaper or it's better or it's more efficient, whatever, less side effect, then the market should be the world, not only in Indonesia. And this is, I think, what I'm trying to challenge UGM to think about it this way. Alan.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. What you've just said about there being 23 reproductive clinics in Indonesia, and just watch the competitive juices between companies, the competitive tension between companies when a company signs up with you to produce something cheaper, which other companies are charging a lot of money for, it will be very attractive. So don't limit yourself to just thinking about what you can do for the 23 clinics in Indonesia. There are hundreds or thousands of those clinics worldwide who may well be very interested in what you want to deliver. So the trick for you is to develop your intellectual property and your whatever it is, develop it further, register it, take it to your technology transfer people, and make sure that the technology transfer people at your university communicate with international bodies who can put your work in contact with the potential international market. I really am quite excited by just the little discussion that I've heard here now about the potential opportunity for this idea, which has come from necessity. You see the necessity for something which is better, more efficient, cheaper. Everybody in the rich world will be happy to pay for what they're already getting, but if they pay a lot less for something which is maybe better or at least equivalent, then they'll even be happy, and therefore you've got a worldwide market. So think about doing that.
Okay. I think this is a very stimulating sessions, and I remember I got interested when Steve also shared with me that in MIT they actually have courses, interdisciplinary courses. I think this is what is lacking. Basically, I mean, if we communicate, maybe we just, most of us maybe communicate just within the Faculty of Medicine, or sometimes even within the department, or even smaller within the division. But I think it's, at the moment, the system is really up to the individuals if they want to go beyond and talk to, for example, faculty at the engineering or biology or different faculties. This perhaps is something that we all can think about, especially now. I think the trend is very much onto multidisciplinary team. So if there's no other questions or comments, then let's give a big applause to Pak Steve for this. And thank you for visiting UGM again, Pak Steve, and we look forward to having you many more times in the future.